Guys, we have another review of a seasonal weapon, and one that I'm happy to report is probably worth your time if you use it appropriately. Different Times is a 540 RPM rapid-fire strand pulse rifle. At first, I was not sold on this weapon at all, the biggest reason being its base stats. Different Times has worse stats than a lot of our other rapid-fire pulse rifles. You can see its base stats here. Compare this to Peace of Mind here, which is higher in every stat except for AE, or Autumn Wind, also higher in every stat again except for AE. This did turn me off initially, but I decided to craft it and give it a try, and it surprised me. You can see the perk pool here, and there's a lot of good options both for PvP and for PvE. Let's talk about some roles real quick before jumping into how to use this weapon in a way that it's at its most effective. First off, for both PvP and PvE, for barrel perks, I would use Arrowhead Break. This is a pretty standard choice for rapid fire frames, and with good reason. Arrowhead Break brings that recoil direction up substantially, giving it a plus 30 bonus to your recoil direction, and it helps your handling with a decent enough plus 10. Rapid fires tend to have fairly substantial recoil, and Arrowhead is extremely helpful in keeping it under control. Next up, for your magazine perks, for PvE, I like anything that increases my reload speed or magazine size. For PvP, either ricochet rounds or high caliber rounds. Ricochet rounds will increase your range by 5 and stability by 10, which will also help with the recoil. High cal increases range by 5 and also increases how much flinch the weapon causes an opponent. Now, normally I would say pick ricochet rounds without question, and it is still what I went with, but don't underestimate high cal on a rapid fire frame. With that higher 540 rate of fire, the increased flinch can be extremely difficult to fight. It's very punishing. Now, moving on to our third and fourth columns, for PvE, I would pick Subsistence for pretty much every combination except for one, and for that one, I would go with Outlaw. In the fourth column, Adrenaline Junkie, Golden Tricorn, Collective Action, Multi-Kill Clip, or Hatchling. Focused Fury is here as well, but I generally view Focused Fury as a perk better suited for special weapons or heavy weapons that you might use for DPS purposes, which you probably won't be with a primary. Now, as far as combos go, first off, since I did mention Outlaw, I would use this if you're going with Multi-Kill Clip. Outlaw increases your reload speed after a precision final blow. Multi-Kill Clip will give a stacking damage buff after reloading depending on how many enemies you put down beforehand. So, kill a bunch of ads, proc Outlaw for the increased reload speed. The synergy here is pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to our other combos, Subsistence is going to be my first pick in the third column for all of them. Defeating targets refills 10% of your magazine. Different Times base magazine size is 34, so if you're using this for ad clear, which is how I imagine most of us are using primaries in PvE, you can go for a long time without reloading. As far as fourth column perks go, Adrenaline Junkie's a great choice for grenade builds. Get kills with grenades or the weapon, and it will give you a stacking damage buff of up to 5 stacks with 6.7% at base and 33% at max. Grenade kills with Adrenaline Junkie will immediately give you all 5 stacks, so throw a grenade, get a kill, then start stacking bodies. Next up, Golden Tricorn. Tricorn gives you a stacking damage buff starting at 15% for 7 seconds. If you get a kill with a powered melee or grenade while Tricorn is active, that damage buff goes all the way up to a massive 50%. This perk is a fantastic damage perk in PvE because it's incredibly easy to proc and it will work with both melee builds and grenade builds. Moving on, Hatchling, precision final blows or rapid final blows with a non-precision weapon will spawn a hatchling. Of course, we already know how these work. The hatchling will seek out a target and explode. This works very well with strand builds, especially if it's centered around hatchlings. Lastly, Collective Action, where picking up an elemental pickup such as a stasis shard or fire sprite will give the weapon a damage buff of 20% in PvE. Of course, this is not as potent as some of our other damage perks, but it's extremely easy to proc and keep procced in PvE. Now, moving on to PvP, in the third column, your best choices are going to be Moving Target, Heating Up, or Outlaw, and this is where I want to talk about how to use this weapon effectively. Despite being a pulse rifle, this weapon really isn't meant for laning. That's the realm of pulse rifles such as No Time, Graviton, Messenger, so on and so forth. Different Times doesn't have the range for that playstyle. Different times is a brawler. It's scrappy. This is a weapon that is best suited for mobile or aggressive playstyles. With arrowhead break, ricochet or high cal, and a range masterwork, you have 32 meters of range. Different times is a firmly mid-range weapon, and it's on the closer end of mid-range. You've got to keep your opponents inside of that range. If you can do that, then this weapon performs very well. So, for that reason, it's important to build into that playstyle. For that purpose, your best choices are going to be moving target or heating up in the third column, and head seeker or golden tricorn in the fourth column. Starting with the third column, moving target is my favorite option here. It increases your aim assist and movement speed while aiming down sights. This is of course very helpful in duels. Heating up is kill activated, and it will increase your accuracy, recoil direction by 20, stability by 10, and this can stack twice. Then, in the fourth column, I already explained how Tricorn works, and Head Seeker will increase damage and aim assist for a short duration of a little over half a second after landing body shots. Now, the combo you go with depends on what you want. If you want consistency, a role that will help you in every single gunfight you get into, then moving target with Head Seeker. On the other hand, if you want one for kill chaining, then heating up with golden tricorn. The one thing to keep in mind with this, however, is tricorn is not a good perk for neutral game. You will need to build into it with a grenade build or a melee build. With this being a strand weapon, of course, this will work particularly well with strand subclasses, but of course will work with others, such as potentially an Ahamkara's Hunter, Synthos Titan, so on and so forth. Now, that 50% damage boost is massive, taking your crits damage from 26 to 36, which means that there's actually some 2-burst potential, lightning fast TTK from a rapid fire pulse. Now, of course, Golden Tricorn does take some setup, more than our other damage perks, but if you get it, you'll have 7 seconds to unleash an unreasonable amount of bloodshed. Lastly, if you want something more middle of the road, then moving target with Tricorn or heating up with Head Seeker. This is the role I went with. I do want to point out that at least in 6v6, Tricorn may honestly be the stronger option. We are, unfortunately, in an ability meta right now, and while ability metas are awful, you may as well take advantage of it. Plus, with it being an ability meta and you likely using your abilities constantly, this works very well with the weapon's intrinsic trait. Now, I went with this role in particular because I still like using my guns in first-person shooters. I like having a better neutral game because for me, the fun of this game comes from doing well using primarily my weapons, which is why I opted for Head Seeker over Tricorn. This is still a very good role. It served me very well, but it is something to keep in mind as you build this weapon for yourself. Now, as everyone knows, I'm not a fan of pulse rifles, largely because, as we've seen over the last year, pulse rifle metas help create slow, passive, boring metas. But I do love certain types of pulse rifles, including rapid fire frames because they cater to a more mobile playstyle. This weapon is a ton of fun, and it is very effective. Is it the strongest player in the meta? Absolutely not. High-impact pulse rifles as a whole are better suited to the current sandbox, but this is still a very strong weapon and a very fun one, so I would recommend you craft one and at least give it a try. Now, that's all I really have to say about different times. This is a very good weapon if used appropriately. If you try to use this weapon like No Time or the Messenger, you will be disappointed, but if you use it aggressively, if you stay mobile, it will perform extremely well. Now, lastly, Guardians, we are going to be taking a bit of a break from the hand cannon reviews. I'm working on one for spare right now, of course, but given that before my last video on Last Right, we reviewed 4 hand cannons in a row, I thought we might mix things up for a little while. Our next review will likely be either Chattering Bone, Outlast, or Last Man Standing. After that, we'll do one more non-hand cannon review, then put out the spare review, and then move along with the rest of our newer weapons this season. For now, that's all from me today, Guardians. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments. Let me know what roles you're going for on this weapon as well. I always love seeing what everyone is using. And as always, leave me a like and hit that subscribe button. We're inching closer to that 500 sub mark, and when we reach it, we'll do something special for it, and I'll be able to apply to become a partner at YouTube, so please hit that sub button with the bell icon. It would mean a lot to me. For now, I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.